Hello and welcome back. This is the second part to my PLN video presentation on the topic of prescriptive feedback. Where we left off, we were under the page of documents and resources, and I was just about to talk about Google Docs. Now, comments from the research, I found out that comments are supported as being more effective than grades or scores in moving learning forward for students, especially for formative assessments. So providing students with questions or suggestions or scaffolded responses is seen as being more effective than simply saying that a student is right or wrong, or giving them a grade, a letter grade, or just giving them a score. So this spring, Dublin became a Google Apps for Education district, and we have been learning, the teachers have been learning about all the different applications and calendars and all the capabilities of Google, which there are a ton. And one of the things that I researched, one of the technology resources that I found is providing written documents, or I'm sorry, providing written comments on Google Docs. So with Google Docs, students can submit their work to teachers for them to view, and then teachers can provide written comments to help students improve their work, to prescribe students ways that they can move their learning forward, how they can fix things, how they can improve upon anything that was submitted to them. And an important quote that I included here is that the secret of effective feedback is that saying what's wrong isn't enough. To be effective, feedback must provide a recipe for future action. And that's that whole idea of prescriptive feedback. It needs to prescribe to students what the next action it is that they should take in order to learn, in order to grow. So I just made up a sample document using Google Docs, and off to the side here you can see I made a comment, and it's not just a comment that's praise, because praise isn't necessarily a good thing because it doesn't tell a student how to improve or what to do next. So I just highlighted a part of this written work under Google Docs, and I just wrote something that says there's a difference between all three depending on the type of problem, and here's sort of my prescription as to what I want this student to do. I said first describe the difference between an equation function and a graph, and then determine how each applies to either an equation, a function, or a related graph. So it kind of moves that student forward and makes them think. Feedback shouldn't cause something that is an emotional reaction. Feedback should be something that causes a cognitive reaction and requires the student to think. And with that said, with the feedback, students should have time to work in class to work on these suggestions, to work on the feedback, the things that were told to them. Otherwise, if they're taking it home, they are less likely to do it, and if they need additional, scaffolded responses from you, they can ask you during instructional time, during class time. So using Google Docs is a great way for students to submit their work to teachers, for teachers to be able to write comments. The comments, they could just be 3 comments for each student work. I'm pretty sure teachers write that much when they're doing it by hand. So really doing it electronically may be even faster and maybe a more organized way of doing it. So Google Docs is a great way for providing written feedback that is descriptive, that is concise, that tells a student where to go next. Another option, it's also using Google Docs. That application is called Kaizena, and Kaizena provides oral comments. Now, this is an application that needs to be downloaded through Google Apps. If you go under the App Store, you can search for it under the app section in the search bar, and you just download it. And it's very easy to use. This is a quick tutorial video from someone who is trained in the Google applications, and they provide information about how to leave the oral comments. The comments don't just have to be voice comments. The comments can be written. And comments can also include web links. So for example, if a teacher highlighted something and they wanted to do a little bit more research on a particular topic or give them an additional resource to understand a topic better, they can link web resources to the feedback that's provided through this application called Kaizena and or Kaizena. And this application, like I said, is free. It's really was developed for teacher use in providing feedback to students. And like I said, it can do voice comments and it can also do written comments. I skipped past this, but what this is also just a quick tutorial on using comments on Google Docs. And the reason I just included this video for teachers who want to learn the shortcut keys, again, we're always trying to save time. So if you want to learn any of those shortcut keys, this is a 3-minute video for how you can do that. Another thing I included in my resources and in my documents is an example formative assessment that I changed. And so my formative assessments have usually been quizzes, and then from those quizzes, the students, I want to use the feedback that I've written on them, but unfortunately with a score and comments, my students are probably not reading those comments to improve. So I took a pre-calculus quiz that I've administered in the past, and I went ahead and gave it an update. I gave it an update that includes some of the strategies, some of the practices that were recommended or that were studied in various case studies that I read about in my annotated bibliography. Now, one thing that I wanted to put on here, three principles of effective classroom feedback are that feedback should be more work for the students than the teacher. If the teacher is doing more work, then the feedback is not being used properly. The feedback should be causing the student to work more, and it should be moving them forward. And for the teacher, since there's one of them and maybe 100 students, they need to make sure that they're providing it in the most effective way possible. So a way to do that might be like with Google Docs comments. It should be focused. Less is more. A student doesn't want to read a paragraph about how they need to improve on something. Very prescriptive, very concise, yet detailed of exactly what they need to work on next needs to be included. And the feedback needs to relate to learning goals, and these learning goals have already been shared with students. The students are aware of their learning goals. That way a student knows what they're trying to achieve in the end. So I took a quiz. This is the original version, and it's just a PDF of that quiz. It was a pre-calc quiz over some introductory trigonometry topics. Your normal quiz, I would emphasize, what do I always put on my quizzes and my tests? I put a score. Now, the quizzes I want students to use formatively so that they can improve and then do better on the actual test. And this is usually the only thing that students look at. So I took the same quiz, updated it, and first thing, notice I'm not providing a grade. It is the same content. And something that I added to this quiz is an opportunity for me to include feedback. Now, something I did get from here is instead of a score or letter grade, I'm doing a very basic grading scheme with 0, 1, or 2, and that's just based on the clearly communicated learning outcomes. And the 0, 1, or 2 either shows no evidence, some evidence, or strong evidence of mastery. And then I have a section for me to leave questions or comments or suggestions. And I have an area for a future plan of action. What's the next step? This is something that I would like to complete with a student, especially if a student did not do very well, then I would like them to be working with maybe a student that did better or to complete together with me. And I, the teacher, can go over the feedback with the student and create a plan of action together. And then if needed, a time for a follow-up conference to see how things are going. If you're not following up, then you don't know where the students are in their progress. Some tips I included: don't give too much praise, provide specific and descriptive ways to improve. Feedback needs to be timely. Now that's important. It needs to be not too quick but not too late at the same time. If you're giving a quiz and then the feedback a week later, that's a little bit too late. So it needs to be timely, but it also can't be like a student doing a problem, you say, no, that's wrong. So it, again, fine line there. And also providing class time for students to use the feedback and improve their work. I think that's a huge thing that I do need to work on next year, is giving that time in class. So that's an example of an assessment that I updated to include some of the knowledge and some of the skills that were presented to me that I learned during my inquiry. The last thing I want to show you in my video presentation is the reflection page. And in the reflection, you can read about sort of my overall summary on what I gained from this capstone. And like I said before, this experience was incredibly eye-opening to me. I feel like that I learned a lot, that I gained a lot, but at the same time, I have a lot more to still learn, and I have a lot more to try. And I want to take the information that I gained, for example, the student experience survey, use the feedback, use the results from my students to really improve upon my instructional practices in the next school year. I found that more effective than an OTES rating. And some of the strategies that really stood out to me included things like feedback needs to move students forward. Sometimes a grade just really shuts down a student. Whether they got an A, they think that they've mastered the material and don't need to do anything else. And if a student got an F, they are completely unmotivated and are still going to do nothing else. So in the end, whether I give a student an A or an F, the results can be exactly the same. So that really challenged the way I've been thinking about grades and have been thinking about feedback. I want to motivate students to continue to use feedback and to learn from experiences. So during my formative assessments, I really want to use a lot of these strategies that I learned, especially with Google Docs. I also want to incorporate more writing and mathematics, just because writing is such an essential skill and I'm not doing it enough in my math courses. Overall, feedback just really needs to cause thinking. Feedback should not cause an emotional reaction with students, because it can cause students to shut down. It can cause students to have and cause them to create a learned helplessness situation. So this goes over my reflection, but overall, I feel like I'm at, the tip of the iceberg right now, and I have a lot to learn and a lot of reading that I want to continue. So I hope you enjoyed my presentation and you learned some valuable information about feedback, and I look forward to getting some feedback from you about my PLN. Thank you.